We are pleased to have with us from Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton. You know, Tom, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
Oh, I'm doing as well as can be expected considering the circumstances. How are you doing, James?
I'm doing okay. Tom, something happened over the weekend on our Saturday show. I don't want to just make you aware of it really quick. We had a lady, very nice lady that called in, and she was so excited. And she shared with us that she had just discovered this website where people are just doing amazing work. She wanted everybody to know what it was. It was Judicial Watch. I can't believe these people. They're doing such. And I had to tell her, we have had Mr. Fitton on, and you're right. They do amazing work, but that just goes to show there are a lot of people that have yet to discover the great work that you do. So before we talk about Donald Trump and his legal woes for a few minutes, can you just kind of let people know what you guys are doing and have been doing? This isn't new. I've been following Judicial Watch since I was with Rush's program. We followed what you guys were doing every step of the way. You've been engaged in this battle for the soul of America for decades now.
We have, and we're a government watchdog group. We're conservative, so we understand as a result that often big government means big corruption, and you really can't trust, certainly at the federal level, the feds to cross the street, honestly. So when it comes to what's been happening to President Trump, pretty much everything we've been worrying about came to a head with the abuse of power by the government. We exposed a lot what was going on under the Freedom of Information Act. And you can bet with Bragg, we're investigating him as well under the law through the open records laws and anything else we're able to do, even just do basic journalism.
Some of the questions
the media refuses to do.
So some of the questions that come up, Tom, and these are questions that you just see all along social media posted from conservatives. Why has there been such a double standard that allows Hillary Clinton, for instance, and the DNC to pay a simple fine for misleading the FBI and misleading law enforcement on this phony Steele dossier? The questions go back further than that. They go back to her mishandling of classified documents. They go back into the Clinton administration and the multiple abuses of what most people consider the breaking of the law there with campaign financing. And then you can move on to that from other areas. The Hunter Biden certainly comes to mind. Why is there no activity with Hunter Biden on the federal level, and yet we see what is happening to President Trump? How do you answer that, Tom?
Well, I think it's quite evident what's happening. And, the way I think about it is it's not a double standard. It's a single standard. They're being perfectly consistent, right? Which is, protect their own and go after their opponents. And that's what's happened consistently in the last several years. It goes on more or less, and there are always exceptions, in my view, that prove the rule over time. But practically speaking, the Democratic left controls the operations of the federal system, certainly when it comes to the Justice Department. And I don't need to tell you who runs New York City or who runs Fulton County, Georgia, or even practically speaking locally, who runs Washington, D.C. I'm not even talking at the federal level. So these are left-leaning jurisdictions run by partisan Democrats who've hijacked the law enforcement apparatus of each jurisdiction at the local, state, and federal level. And right now there's this storm front that goes from Georgia through D.C. all the way up to New York that's raging against our republic with this malicious process against our dear president, Donald Trump, an innocent man, for the record.
What do you expect if you do? I know that I think people are telling me, and I read reports from pundits saying, oh, this is going to be dismissed on the merits. Oh, nothing. Tom, I've always had the opinion that once something enters a courtroom, especially in a situation where there's potentially bias, all bets are off. You can't predict what's going to happen. No one can predict what will happen here. There's so many factors that come into play. If there's a jury trial, how are the jurors selected? Who's excluded? I think it was Alan Dershowitz who said this ought to be moved out of Manhattan and put into Staten Island. There are so many variables at work here. How do you think people should prepare themselves for whatever the outcome is here mentally? How they should look at this?
I think your listeners should presume that Donald Trump, one way or another, is going to become a political prisoner, by hook or by crook.
Wow,
that's what the left plans. I mean, we're presuming. I mean, to your point. I mean, is he even giving bail tomorrow? I don't know. I don't know how it works there. Maybe you've talked to lawyers who will tell you, "Oh, yeah, ordinarily, there's no doubt he'll get bail." Well, I don't know. I mean, he shouldn't be prosecuted. I mean, what we're witnessing is a failure of the system, and so there's one thing to say that once the process begins, it takes on its own methodology in terms of finding out what the truth is or getting to a result. That's the way it's supposed to work, right? Here we have politics on top of it. So it's even worse than you can't predict what's going to happen. It's like, well, you should just be prepared for the worst. And the worst, in many ways, has already begun. I never thought we'd see this day. I've been worried about it, but I mean, the idea that they're going to prosecute a former president and the top candidate opposing Biden on such obviously pretextual bases is, it makes me fear for the future of our republic and the Republican form of government. Meaning, are we going to be a nation of laws or a nation ruled by men?
What is the response that, as a political party now, not a legal judgment, but Tom, as just a political judgment, you are an observer of what happens in politics as well as wearing your legal hat. Politically, what should be the response of the Republican Party to what we are all as a country witnessing right now?
Well, just so you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I've had a little too much experience looking at these political/legal fights. I think there should be a strong denunciation. Everyone who is anyone in national Republican politics, and frankly, even at the local level, should denounce this. Honest Democrats, and they are honest Democrats. I mean, you're in New York, there's kind of a conservative opposition even within the Democratic Party up there. Should denounce this. The governor of New York should intervene and stop this. We've got to protect our country from this abuse. I mean, is this the new standard? Part of the election season is trying to jail your political opponents. That's not when the elections begin. It's when you prosecute and jail your political opponents. That's when the campaign season begins. God help us, James. God help us.
Couldn't agree more. Very quickly, and we have to stop here. Please tell people where they can reach you and Judicial Watch, Tom.
We're on the internet all over the place, but our website is judicialwatch.org, judicialwatch.org. That's where that fine young listener lady who called you was looking at.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll have you back in the near future. Thank you so much, Tom.